Right, so we're handing you over now to Adrian Culley. Adrian?
Okay, so Adrian Culley here. I'm to a brief summary of my background. Pretty much got a blue chip security CV. In the last 12 months, we've been very active and I've had a lot of successes. I'll talk about a couple of examples in a little while in a lot more detail. But I know it's a cliche, but success does lead to success. And if you make good decisions, you get things right at an early stage, you will find yourself more and more in demand. And I'll try and share over the next couple of slides some of the experience as to how we've achieved that. If we can go to the next slide, please, Dan, or whoever's in charge. Okay, so I can't do this without giving you a broad philosophy. Some of you may be familiar with, you may not be familiar with, there's a well-worn Chinese proverb, when's the best time to plant a tree? And there's two answers. The first answer is 20 years ago. Of course, if you didn't do it 20 years ago, when's the next best time? And that's now. And what I'm talking about here in terms of thought leadership is your own provenance, skills, experience and background. It's great if you've got things that you've been involved in for a long time that really add to your, why should people listen to what you've got to say? Why are you relevant and valid? However, if that follows on from Tom's example of James Long, who is an excellent speaker, I know James personally, there's nothing to stop anybody starting. Everybody's got to start somewhere. I do get annoyed myself being a little bit longer in the tooth when I come across over the years people trying to tell younger people that they can't do it and it's just not for them yet and so on and so forth. And that's a load of nonsense as well. So I think both aspects of this Chinese proverb are valid. And it's a doing thing, which takes on the next slide. So, recapping in a little way what Dan started off with and what Tom's just covered. Know your stuff, never stop learning. Question and challenge things, particularly if you're representing a company. Just because you've been given their latest academic paper, their latest white paper, make sure you read it, make sure you challenge the author. Ask, I do all the time. The reason for this is, well, the clue's in the name. Thought leadership implies thinking. And people don't always do that. And you'll notice in this, I don't have don'ts, but I will give them verbally. Don't be a talking sales brochure. People can read for themselves. You do need to have that depth of knowledge to be able to go off-piste, handle questions, and most importantly, be answering, in an interview with a journalist, both one eye on who's the audience for the final piece that the journalist is wanting to deliver to, but also the journalists themselves answering their question. Are you on topic, on subject? Doesn't mean you can't disagree with them or introduce new information they don't know, but what they don't want to know, as Tom alluded to in his talk, is they don't want to know what your latest colours of widget that your company produces are. You're not going to achieve thought leadership in that way. Secondly, the psychology of getting it right. Why do we want to achieve thought leadership? This is quite powerful. We all are programmed that when we learn information for the first time and it is useful to us, it resonates in some way, we will both remember who told us, but we will also enjoy, because there's a good chance if we've just learned it for the first time, a lot of our friends and colleagues won't know this and we can educate them for the first time. And that's a sort of ripple effect. And people, when you get it right, people remember that you're the person that they learned from. You're the person that explained it. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to be constantly, Thomas Edison reinventing the world, inventing things yourself. Sometimes that's helpful, but it can also be analytical comment on occurring events, on what's in the news today. We had some success about 6-8 weeks ago. There was a report came out from the Bank of England regarding a banking security exercise at the same time as a senior government minister made some comments that were completely opposite. We picked up on this collectively, myself and E-Class, and we were able to serve it up to a number of journalists as, look, there's a straightforward conflict here. And that was from both knowing what we're talking about and following contemporaneous events. Advice I give to other people is also be confident to say no. I was contacted via email start of last week, just over a week ago, asking to comment on the missing Malaysian plane being hacked, and I straightforward refused to do it. It was complete speculation. There's no evidence whatsoever to suggest it was a hack-in. I wasn't prepared to do that, and I said no. Those of you who know me well will know I'm a strong enough character to do that. However, it is about building relationships as well, both with the journalist and the audience. All business people do business with people. And certainly from my perspective, I'm always looking to not just give a one-off quote. If I get this personally, if I get a sniffer journalist who's after rent a quote, they're not likely to get anything. I want to build a relationship with the journalist. I want the journalist to build a relationship with me. But most important is the bottom point on this slide, which is responsiveness is key. We one of the most surreal days of my life in the last 12 months was end of June last year. I ended up on Newsnight that evening talking about the Huawei issue regarding China having access to British telecoms security systems or not. We got the approach from the BBC round about just after midday. We had to respond within half an hour. I was 300 miles away at the time, and literally within 2 hours of an initial approach, I was on a train to London, and within 8 hours of the original approach, I was in the BBC studio waiting to go on the programme. There was a academic expert. I did some background research. The first thing is, some of you may not be familiar with the name Huawei. You may have seen it or pronounced it as Huawei, which is how it looks to a British or English-speaking person. It's not how it's pronounced at all. In fact, even the BBC's translation and pronunciation department had got it wrong. Through a little bit of research in the 8 hours that we had, we got it right. And that gave us a lot of credence and provenance as well, that we were actually even knew the name of the company that was involved, never mind the background underlying issues. But we got that opportunity through being flexible and responsive, and you know, it's part of why I want to build relationships with journalists. I want to, you know, I'm very much aware that on occasion you're very tight against it in terms of deadlines and copy submission. It's not so common these days that you'll have an exclusive article that's been commissioned. Sometimes it's first past the post. So we try collectively as best as we can to, where things are tight for you, to get you a quote that's helpful, some comment that's helpful in a tight time frame. Think about the language that you're using. Again, it's teach anyone to suck eggs to the journalists here. I'm sure you're all familiar with George Orwell's rules on the English language, but try not to use cliches. If you're using an analogy, try and make sure it's actually relevant and it actually extends and follows through. I have bugbears with American colleagues all the time who get hooked up on buzzwords. The latest one is ecosystem. I had a meeting just a couple of months ago where I said to a CEO who was busy peppering me with ecosystems, excuse me, 2 of those ecosystems you've just mentioned, surely they're actually microclimates of the first ecosystem. That was far too much thinking for him, and he just stopped dead in his tracks. If you're going to use analogies, they're very powerful. They do resonate with people, and they're an effective part of being a thought leader, but they must stand up. They can't just be meaningless throwaway buzzwords. But when you get it right, they're very, very helpful. Do trust your PR team and the journalist. It's nice if you can get oversight of the copy before it goes out, if there isn't such time constraints. However, when you back to building the relationship, when you've developed that trust, certainly I find I'm much more comfortable that it's not so essential that I have any final sight. Tom touched on social media. There's a couple of things I want to say about that. It is important. The reason we're all doing what we're doing today, all doing what we're doing day to day, is society is now digital. The economy is digital. It's why I feel you'll hear much less about cybercrime. It's already the prefix E is dropping away. And it's because most crime has a digital element now. Most crime involves cybercrime to some extent. Because of that, most media is connected into the social media as well. This permeates the whole of society. Do know the differences between Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, what's appropriate, what's not. I see people all the time making posts on LinkedIn which basically say, our widgets are now available in blue. That's not the way to achieve thought leadership. You must be sharing ideas and information with people that's useful to them, whether it's connecting ideas, whether it's negating ideas, back to being confident to say no. You know, saying something's not correct, more than happy to do as well. It all helps people. What they don't want to hear is what your latest marketing brochure says. The other thing to consider about social media is what the target audience, much more so than earlier when you're doing a piece for a journalist, but what the target audience are actually doing at the moment that you make your post. And not everybody's got to this level of subtlety and sophistication with target social media yet. The two biggest English-speaking groups using Twitter, for example, are London and New York in terms of commuting groups. And I personally found it very, very useful making Twitter posts if I time them to between 7:30 and 8:30 on the morning for London, and between 7:30 and 8:30 on the morning for New York. You have a massive demographic that's using public transport, and it doesn't guarantee, but it greatly increases your chances of trending. So there are many subtleties to effectively using social media, but done right, it can be very, very powerful. And then lastly, what we're doing here, again, less is more, keep it simple. It's all about talking to people, which is another way of saying build a relationship. You need to be able to do that. That's me wrapped up.
Lovely. Thank you very much for sharing your perspective, Adrian. Very interesting insight of the spokesperson. We're now going to hand over to Murad Ahmed,